It was always going to end badly. That was the title written on Vanity Fair by none other than Brian Stelter, about none other than Tucker Carlson and his exit from Fox News. But folks, it's gone further than that now. It has a lot to do with this video, the details of which we're going to cover today in Tucker Carlson's final monologue, a surprise release that no one expected to see, and that's the details of the story we're going to bring you here in just 1 minute. So before we get rolling word for word into this final monologue, this shocking release, I need a favor from you. I need you to make sure you're still subscribed to Lisa. If you're new here, welcome home. Please subscribe to the channel. She'll also put a link to my channel just above. If you can click on it, that means the world to both of us. You never know where we're going to air, but there's one place you always know where we're at. And we need you there now. We're throwing more and more material at restrictedrepublic.com. Today, use discount code INDEPENDENCE. It's going to get you $4 a month for 2 years plus 14 days for free. Discount code INDEPENDENCE and monthly checkout. She wants you there today, please. She created that with her own blood, sweat, and tears. Took us a long time. It is fully up and running, and there is material there that you will and can't and not allowed to find anywhere else. Get there today, not tomorrow. RestrictedRepublic.com. Use discount code INDEPENDENCE, $4 a month, each month for 2 years plus 14 days for free. We'll see you when you're over there. Exclusive content, no commercials, no interruptions, beholden to no one but you, our audience. Now let's roll back into this story about Tucker Carlson. On the morning of April 24th, 2023, Tucker Carlson was up unusually early, for him at least. By 11 in the morning, when Fox News President Susan Scott called him on the phone, Carlson had already filed his script for that night's monologue. That day happened to be his 6-year anniversary of Fox moving his show into the prime 8 p.m. time slot. So Carlson, of course, assumed Scott was calling to congratulate him, but that was not the case now, was it? No, and his biographer has slipped out some material that, well, no one expected to ever see or ever read. Instead, she told him his show was being pulled from the air and provided no explanation. Of course, the answer may just be that if enough people call you to be canceled, ultimately, you will be. And he was. And a year later, Fox still has refused to provide any official reason for removing Carlson from the air, but to Carlson and his stagnant viewership. Most assume rightly it had to do with Carlson's political beliefs, which made him an enduring nuisance to the Washington establishment. And what I'm about to read to you will show you it is specifically that. Because now we have details not only from Tucker Carlson, but also people testifying in Congress right now to tie this entire story together, and it makes it rather clear. Chadwick Moore, again, that's the man who wrote the book you see here, Tucker, is the one who has exposed so much of this information. Tucker Carlson's final unaired Fox News monologue. On April 24, 2023, Carlson sent the following monologue to his producers at Fox shortly after he was terminated. Now you get the details of it. In his final monologue, Carlson planned to tease the first part of a 1-hour interview with former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund. You've seen it now on Tucker Carlson's own show. I hope you have. In that interview, which Fox owns and refuses to air, Sund revealed federal law enforcement and Democratic members of Congress were aware of impending violence during the January 6th election integrity protest, but vetoed assistance to cops on the ground. Now we have further information on that now too, don't we? In that testimony I just alluded to. And I'll play you or read to you that testimony that ties this entire story together. The script for that unaired monologue, which Tucker sent off to his producers before the call came in from Susan Scott, has never been published until now. No one outside Fox, except for me, has seen it. That's the author of his biography speaking there. But it has to do with this interview. At least when he starts his monologue. I want you to listen in here for just 1 minute.
I believe that we leave to the courts to solve issues that politics is really supposed to solve, that our legislating is supposed to solve. We have very real issues with what is permissible on air. And we saw that with January 6th.
Did you see Jen Psaki there nod her head in acknowledgement that a congressional member is saying that they have very real concerns, things need to be handled about what is aired? Our basic freedom of speech fundamentals, Jen Psaki is nodding her head at. An acceptance, is that's okay? Of course it's not. One of many things that tripped Carlson off. This is Chadwick Moore again, Tucker Carlson's final unaired Fox News monologue. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read his final monologue word for word. We may take a few breaks in between. Don't worry, it won't take that long, but I will speak rather quickly because I think it's important to try to figure out what caused Fox's termination of Tucker Carlson. It was these words that ended his career, his final monologue. Sandy Cortez, who is AOC, he calls her Sandy Cortez, did just an interview with Jen Psaki, I showed you, in which she demanded that authorities pull our show off the air. Here's the clip.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence.
Members of Congress aren't allowed to talk like this. The Constitution of the United States prohibits it. American citizens have an inalienable right to critique and criticize their political leaders. That's an art that we all deploy, but they don't want us to be able to say anything. They want no opposition. That is the outcome of what they're looking for. Our politicians are not gods, he states. They're instruments of the public will. They serve the rest of us, not the other way around. For the obvious reason, politicians can never censor our speech or try to control what we think. That unchanged fact is the basis of our founding documents, of our political system, and our personal freedoms, he states. As a former government official who claims to now be a journalist, Jen Psaki should know this and defend America's foundational principle. But she didn't. She nodded. She refuses. Instead, she just looked like a fan of Sandy Cortez, calls for law enforcement to shut down news programs just like Tucker Carlson. The White House Correspondents Associate and various other self-described advocates of freedom of press stay silent too. Apparently, they agree with Ocasio-Cortez and they're too afraid to say otherwise. What do they fear? They're in no, but yet they fear government officials. Isn't that terrifying? It's distressing to watch this. The last thing America needs is more public figures saying radical things. What if we came on the air 5 nights a week and called for AOC to be handcuffed and carted away because we didn't like her political views, just like they're doing with Trump? Of course, that would be called inappropriate because it is the current ruling party, isn't it? We could certainly do that, he states, but we never would because it would be terrible for our country. Extremism is self-perpetuating, which it is. The more you encourage, the more you get exponentially. We don't want that. Nobody does. We want to live in the United States we had a few years ago where people who disagreed had a debate, a direct debate, face-to-face using facts and reason. But now it's sound bites, talking bites, all fixed and figured to fit the narrative they would want to, relate to you. But there is no real debates anymore, is there? Of course not. Everything is a soundbite. Everything's a meme. Everything's a snippet. First time, IQ is dropping. Did you know that? Wonder why. When I live in the States a few days ago, sorry about that. We'll do whatever we can to return to that standard, including giving AOC airtime. She is always welcome on the show. We'll travel to her anywhere and give her a full hour. We'll be civil and rational and let those who decide who's got a more appealing vision for America's future. We've asked her to come on the show many times. We'll continue to do that. But in the meantime, because the words of our leaders matter, let's consider the substance of what she stated. She demanded that our show be canceled because the things we're saying are, quote, very clearly incitement to violence. That's true. Even accounting for the fact that people tend to hear what they want to hear. How could that be true? It's not true. It's a lie. And anyone who watches the show knows this. We're opposed to violence, as we are, and always have been. Not just philosophically, but in practical terms. We're against violent crime, the strongest oppressing the weak. We're against the horrors of late-term abortion and state-encouraged euthanasia. And above all, we're passionately opposed to the violent and pointless cruelty of war in Ukraine. Ooh, maybe that's what got him, huh? Which the Biden administration could end at any moment, thus saving the lives of innocents, but instead prolonging purely for ideological reasons. These are the things we dislike the most, the acts of violence our leaders endorse. AOC is one of those leaders. She supports every one of those indefensible things, from abortion and 9 months of pregnancy to extending the carnage in Ukraine, who, honestly, is on the side of violence. This is what flipped the script on Tucker Carlson, ended his show. And where, we wonder, is AOC on the question of Ray Epps? January 6th was a violent insurrection, they tell us. And on the basis of that claim, he states, they're turning the war of terror against America's own citizens. We believe this is a false characterization. As we've said many times, January 6th, in his opinion, was not an insurrection, which is why no one has been charged for that crime. No guns were brought into the Capitol. No plans to overthrow the government have ever been found. It wasn't an insurrection, but there was violence, as we know about the unjust shooting of Ashley Babbitt that he points out. An unarmed protester. The man who did it was praised by politicians in both parties. Outside the building, a riot broke out. Windows were broken. Cops were assaulted. We were offended by this on the day it happened, and we said so. We still are. We're against violence in Chicago, Ferguson, downtown Kenosha, or on the west steps of the Capitol building in Washington. As we bring this to a close now. The main question from January 6th, he states, is how did the violence start? Nearly 2.5 years later, we still can't say with certainty. I think we can a lot more now. Remember, this was over a year ago. The night before the riot, for example, a man called Ray Epps was caught on camera encouraging protesters to breach the Capitol. He would then play his clip. Whenever you see SOT here, that means a clip would be playing. You know his show. The next day, as violence began, Epps was filmed again doing the same. Was that legal? We can't say. We don't know that any fair person would define what Ray Epps said to the crowd on January 6th as inciting violence. Epps encouraged those around him to break through a cordon of armed police officers and breach a federal building. What Epps told the crowd to do could only lead to physical conflict, but by AOC standard, Ray Epps should be punished for inciting violence, and eventually was with a slap on his wrist, now wasn't he? Tucker didn't know this at the time. That was before that happened. Epps is currently being defended by the great ferocity by neoliberal Democrats. His lawyer is a liberal activist who once worked with the Democratic Party, as well as primary law firm Perkins Coie. He now works with the Hillary Clinton confidant, David Brock. Epps was even defended by the January 6th committee, despite the fact that he was the only person we've seen on video encouraging a breach of the Capitol. Last night, Epps appeared on the Democratic Party's biggest television show, 60 Minutes, to attack the show for asking questions about who he is and why he's never been arrested for what he did on January 6th. And so, every so often, with his new ally, AOC, we've asked reps on the show, Ray Epps, sorry about that, on the show many times. We'll continue to do that. But given its historic and present political significance, we wanted as many perspectives on January 6th as possible. So we've spoken with for more than an hour, to many who were in charge of security that day. The former head of Capitol Police, Stephen's son, is one example. I hope you've seen that show now, that Tucker did, because now we have further evidence as to what occurred that day. The testimony by those in the National Guard. I'm going to read it here in just a second. We also spoke with Son about the intel and FBI offices in the crowd, as we spoke about Ray Epps. That's what ended Tucker Carlson's career. Was that due to the interview? Was it due to his position against Ukraine? Was it due to his position against AOC? Start the court-martial proceedings. D.C. National Guard whistleblowers allege Trump's commander-in-chief powers were revoked by military brass during the January 6th event. You see, what goes around, my friends, comes around. All the evidence is on the table. All Tucker Carlson was doing is what he normally does, like we do, staying ahead of the story. But Fox News and the powers that be decided that wasn't going to happen. And so they turned his lights out. And here we are today. He has his own show. But as mainstream media becomes more controlled, I don't even know who is actually free in the press anymore. If Trump wants to buy anything, maybe he should buy the Washington Post or the New York Times so we actually can get some real ideas out there. Agree with them or not, we need to hear both sides of the aisle, but we aren't. And the minute Tucker Carlson got so powerful that his voice rang so true to so many, they do what they always do, didn't they? They make them disappear or become less significant. Those were the final words of Tucker Carlson. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justice Knight, signing out.